Hi, my name is Jessica Kelly, and this is my presentation on the role gender plays in our society. I will briefly discuss different aspects that gender affects in today's society versus the past. The contents of this discussion will include backgrounds of how the female roles were in the 1950s versus today. Gender stereotypes, we'll look at male and female stereotypes. Sometimes the men can have feminine qualities and the women can have masculine qualities. We'll just look at those differences and how they relate. Also, cultural changes in how marriages are today versus how they were years ago, and changes in the roles for men and women in the household as well as in the workplace. Communication differences for men and women, how they communicate with same sex versus opposite sex, and nonverbal communication. Lastly, we will look at sexual orientation. We will talk about the differences in heterosexual, homosexual, and bisexual individuals. We'll start with background. When you look at the background of how gender was in the 1950s compared to how gender is looked at now, you see a few changes, some subtle changes, but the main one is how women were looked at and perceived in the past. Women in the 50s were expected to do what their husband says, clean the house, take care of the kids, have dinner on the table when their husband arrived home from work. They dressed a certain way. They were different back then, the ways they handled things. In today's society, the woman may be the one with a job, and the man may be at home caring for the children in the house. Gender roles have changed in the last several decades, and they continue to change daily. There's more independent women who don't need a man to help take care of the kids in the house, single independent moms. When we look at gender stereotypes, here's a table that I found with some of the traditional feminine and masculine stereotype qualities. In the traditional view, the woman was gentle, emotional, kind, and sensitive to others' feelings, whereas the man was independent, dominant, tough, and blunt. Today's younger generations are sensitive, they get their feelings hurt, and they need a safe place. If you compare the way the new generation of men is versus how the traditional stereotype was, it looks like we have a world full of women. Women are not following into the traditional female role, but we can still be nurturing and kind when the time is right. If you look at the 18-year-old male from the 1940s, 1950s, they were going off to war. They were fighting for our country. They were making a living back home. When they come back home, they were taking care of their family. They were working every day. And then when you look at the 18-year-olds of today, they want to hide in their room and use all their parents' money and cry about wanting to be an adult. Well, you need to act like an adult. They need to look at these stereotypes of how their male gender is supposed to act. When you look at the tradition of marriage, it is between a man and a woman. That is what is written in the Bible, and as a Christian, I believe that should be the only way a marriage should be. Everyone is entitled to their beliefs, opinions, and feelings, but today, in today's world, I feel people have taken advantage of the First Amendment saying that they have the right to marry who they choose. Well, if they would read the First Amendment, it's freedom of speech, not freedom of who you want to marry. As a country founded on the Bible, I do not feel that they should marry their own sex. The roles of the male and the female have changed drastically from the male being the breadwinner, the one with the job bringing home the money, to now in some families the female is the breadwinner. The mom may have a better job. Women are getting higher educations, obtaining higher positions in companies, and making a name for themselves. The women are just stepping up and taking control, and the men are staying home, taking care of the kids and taking care of the house. And that works. They're not any less masculine for doing that. They're supporting their wife, and I see nothing wrong with that. Communication between men and women is the start of a lot of fights in couples. One thinks the other isn't listening, so to them they get mad and defensive, and then they stop talking, so then there's no communication. Women communicate with each other more than men. Women can talk for hours to friends, while men just say what they need to say and they're done with the conversation. A couple who has been together for an extended period can develop nonverbal communication skills. One can give the other a look from across the room, and the latter half will know it is time to go. I can give my husband some looks, and he knows what I'm thinking, from we need to go, I'm hungry, and I cannot stand the person that is talking to me. Women like to talk face-to-face with each other versus using a telephone, email, or text messaging. Communication is important in every relationship, because without it, things become missed and something could be misunderstood, taken the wrong way. Sexual orientation is kind of a sticky subject these days. Heterosexual is a couple that consists of a male and a female. And that is the way a relationship should be, in my opinion. Homosexual is when the couple is made up of two people from the same sex, 2 men or 2 women. Homosexual couples are pushing for equal rights and comparing their lack of rights to when women's rights were less. That is not an equal comparison in my mind, and isn't fair to the women of history who have fought for those rights so that we women today can vote and have better paying jobs. It's not equal to a homosexual couple wanting to have the same rights as a heterosexual couple. And then you have the bisexual people who believe they should have the right to love and be in a relationship with who they want. And that's fine. Be in a relationship with the opposite sex or your own sex. Just do not try to change the institution of marriage, which is 1 male and 1 female. I have homosexual friends and I love them to death. I don't agree with their lifestyle, but that's not for me to change. That's their freedom to live how they want.